welcome to the FaceHammer Advent Calendar series. And in this video, Russ is going to discuss color theory.
Yeah, I'll disclaimer this. I don't profess to be
Okay.
an expert. Okay, I'm not.
That's completely rubbish. You're online. You must be an expert. Everyone's.
I've not ever done any art or design.
So you've not got a degree
higher
in art and you're
education
offering
or
an
anything like
opinion
that.
on
So
stuff?
there are going to be people who know a lot more than me. I'm just covering this, but
Yeah,
we asked
okay.
in our Discord, and some people asked about color theory, and we do talk about it quite a
Yeah.
lot. So in my basic knowledge,
Okay.
so we're not going to be able to. There's no silver bullet with how to use color on your models effectively, because that's what we talk about: miniature painting, color schemes, right? But understanding it will help you choose colors on your miniatures. But it's important to understand that a color has a range as well. It has like lots of tonal variation. So you can see on the screen now a color wheel. So this is quite a complicated version, but what I'll do is I just googled it. So yes, this is someone else's content. I'm just showing you what
Okay.
they say. So
Da-da-da.
in fact, if you've got primary colors, so obviously like yellow, blue,
Yeah.
and red, and then if you mix those together, you get secondary colors. So if you mix like blue and yellow, you get green. If you mix like blue and red, you get purple, and yellow and red, you get orange. So they're your secondary. Then you get tertiary, which is if you mix those two again. So that's why it's a wheel, because it's each in between each segment, you get another color, and those basically that gives you your spectrum of colors around the wheel. And then the reason you put them in a wheel is because it shows you by position which harmonize, which complement, and things like that. So for example, you can see here that they call it analogous. I don't know how you say that, but it's basically if you pick like three colors that are close, like yellow, lime, and like a turquoisey sort of more sort of normal green, then those are effectively in a 12. They're side by side, so those ones there will harmonize very well. So you can look at like a verdigris leaf. You kind of, which is the example there. Complementary are opposites. So they will complement each other quite well. So they will give you lots of contrast. So like red and green. So orcs, green skin, red armor. Yeah. They contrast. It gives you and it's used quite a lot in graphic design. And normally very bright and bold. And then so that's a very basic stuff. Okay, but a color doesn't necessarily need to be bright and bold. It could be desaturated, which means it's more washed out. It's not as strong, and then you end up with so like a purple. You could have like really bright purple, or like the wall behind me is quite a pale, washed out purple, but it is still purple. So it's like and that's where you're adding black and white and going to more solid color and different tones, and that's really where you start to make decisions. So do you have a bright and bold orange and a bright and bold blue, and that might be fine for a Blood Bowl team, but if you're trying to do like a natural looking fish, you might say, well, blue and orange would look really nice, but I want them to look, the blue's kind of gone more into cream and it's more kind of washed out, and the orange is more yellowy cream as well, and they're both washed out with the same colour, so it's desaturated it right down, so it looks more natural. Because in nature, things aren't generally like super bold, bright colours. So
unless it's like a tree frog for warning and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's mostly
you do get it, but it's deciding what effect you want. So there is and that is the extreme basics of it. Okay, so I'm not really going to go into it in too much detail in terms of with miniature painting, because miniature painting, really, people talk about colour, but really the thing that makes your models really come to life is when you understand light. And this is the thing that I struggle with as well. I'm not perfect at it in any way, shape, or means. And what I would recommend, and this is a bit of a cop-out, to be honest, if you want to know...
I know what book you've got.
If you want to know about colour and light, this book... which is Colour and Light, which you'll look upside down on the video. But basically, it's by James Gurney, and in here are some really, really good principles. It talks about direct sunlight. It talks about, you know, light from windows, candlelight, firelight, electric lights, street lights, night conditions, luminescence. So it talks about that, but it also talks about how light affects on forms. So you've got like this, you know, you won't be able to see this very much, but you can see like a ball, and it talks about how light, it talks about bounce shadows and bounce light. Some of the most interesting stuff for me is about how it affects colour and how it, and then some of the good stuff is these faces, and you've got, this is what they call 3/4 lighting, so you can see this face, and the way they've got this is obviously a bust, and you've got this shadow and how it, the nose casts a shadow because the light's coming in from this direction, and this is quite often common on a model to do 3/4 lighting. But how often have you painted a model and painted a shadow with that starker line like that on the cheek? And if you want realism, that's what you go for. And
you see a lot of that in like graphic novels and stuff, don't you? Like they do it with that stark sort of like because it's punchy. You look at it and you definitely see like that shadow. That's not.
And it's the same with frontal light like that. That shows you, like, that's typically how you'd paint a model, because actually when you can see that it's lightest in the middle of the face. Now, the reason you wouldn't do the other is unless it's a bust that you're going to have photographed from a specific angle, as a model turns. So as I move my face, the light that I've got here will change to how my face is highlighted and shaded. A model's three-dimensional. You're going to pick it up, move it around. And this is why non-metallic metal is quite hard to get right if on something you're going to be moving around. Whereas if you're photographing it, it's a lot easier because you paint it and then you just snap it. That's the angle because you dictated the angle.
The golden angle referred to by the heavy metal team.
Yeah. And then you've got stuff like edge lighting. So, like, you know, where the light catches on the edge because it's coming from behind, or you've got see-through. And you see it with, like, your hand. If you hold your hand up, you can see light on your fingers, like, come on the edges like that. You can see that on there, like, on my hand. So, and I'm not saying that you need to apply all this to your models, but this is quite an important principle, and it's reflected light. So the light's coming from this side, but actually you're getting this red cast up because it's reflecting off a red surface. And this could be called a bounce light as well. And quite often when you do zenithal, one of the things people don't get right is they don't do that bounce light. Because light bounces off surfaces and catches. And that's why you don't get extreme black, you know, unless the light's not strong enough to hit the surface and bounce up. But there's generally always a bounce light.
Yeah, which is quite cool. People use it a lot for OSR, don't they? Where I think that if you're not doing like a well applied OSR looks amazing, whereas like you can do a quick and easy way with just like an airbrush. But I think understanding where the light would fall and using that bounce light as an example, you then have it sort of, you know, like the light would be on that side of the face with it not touching here, but it would still bleed around the edges. Which is really, really cool. I'm really, really interested.
And there's a section then again on colour. So you've got colour wheels and a lot of explanation about, because the colour wheel's quite an old principle. So obviously there's a lot more work on that. And he talks about value and chroma. So you can see like you can see like this is blue. It's all blue, but you've got white, grey. This is a blue grey. Still grey, so you say that's not blue. It is blue. It's got a blue. It's underlying. It's blue, but you can't see any blue really, because this almost looks the same as this red value. Yeah, but it's obviously slightly different.
And it's we're not saying that you would use this on every model, but having an understanding of it is quite helpful, particularly if you want to paint high-end stuff, or if you want to apply that to a complete army project. So if you wanted to, like, use that blue as an example, you've got like the light blue, which is almost white, down to the dark blue, which is almost black. So if you were doing, say, a Deepkin army that was based under the sea, you would be able to apply all those different values, and it'd be almost monochrome because of the one color that it's done. But you just use it via, you know, a dark blue right the way up to like a light blue, and keep the saturation the same. You know, so it would be sort of like dark right the way through, and then the vibrancy, you wouldn't want like a really bright blue. It'd be all down that one line, and then it's almost creates a monochromatic look to the army.
And I think as well, like I'll talk about limited palettes in a minute, but you've got like warm underpainting. This is 2-dimensional stuff. So obviously what he's done here is he's put a warm colour under all of this and then paint on top of it.
Yeah.
This is the same as your base coat in a model. So because paints, they are not truly opaque. Like the coverage of a paint is, if you say you could do an example, if you paint a model black, then you put a red out the pot, same consistency, same amount on a model, and then if you take that same surface area and do half of it with the same red and the same consistency again when it's dry, then you take another that section, take a half of that and do it, so you're gonna have 3 different reds. It's exactly the same red, but it looks different, and the reason is because more of the black is showing through. Now you can use that effect with painting a model by painting what Byron will call pre-shading in black and white, or it could be in yellows, or it could be in greens, and then paint it over the top. And this is we've been playing a lot with contrast, and I find that layering contrast on top of contrast, one of it thinned, and you say, right, I did a Riddler gang, and I said, right, I want to do him in like luminous green. There isn't a luminous green contrast paint. So what I did is I took the yellow and I put that on first, and then I put the Warpstone Glow over the top of it. Now what that meant is that green had a lot more yellow in it, which meant it looked more like luminous. Not luminous, but it's more like yellowy green. And that's 2 contrast paints.
Yeah, it's the same. I did a lot with shading. I'd have like, I'd go black Templar through Basilicanum up to like Grey Seer on or something, and then apply a red over it, and then you've got a dark to light transition on that panel, because you've essentially gone, right, this is black, this is grey, this is light grey. Apply the contrast paint, and then it creates that gradient then without you having to blend a black into a red. Yeah, which is
so you do it in black and white monochrome or whatever, and then the colour over the top thinned, and that allows you to get the danger of getting that is your midtones normally are a bit desaturated. But you can always go in and tidy it up with a highlight or a wash or a glaze or something to.
It's something that I've been doing a lot. Like I think my Harry the Hammer model from years ago was that was basically black and white, and then I just glazed red over the top of it to make it look, and added more blood red back in the day to make it more vibrant. So then you've got that transition, because I always found it was easier to blend black through to white than it was to blend black through to red and have the transition smooth.
Yeah, and then this is the thing that I wanted to talk about, which is this Gamut Mapping, which is where you basically put a shape over a colour wheel. So I'll put this up to the camera so you can see this shape here. Now, if you only use those colours in that shape, that's a limited palette. And I think there's a whole section on what shapes work, but you can move the shape around anywhere on the colour wheel. Like you can slide it around and go, where do I want it? I think you can buy stencils that you can just get them. They're like geometric shapes. So you can do, like, for an example, this is really bad, I should have took photos, but you get the idea. So you've got like this picture here, and taken out a section here. So all the colours are in this spectrum.
Yeah, so, that makes complete sense, yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like, you're basically going, I'm only going to use this small area of colour, and it will work, and it'll be fine. Now, you don't have to use all of them, and you don't have to use all the tonal variations between them, but if you went outside of it, it might look a bit weird. Not that you couldn't do it, because you might want the contrast, but it's just
it's like a cheat sheet, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like, if I stay in these, then it's okay. I don't have any jarring colours. It's one of the things that I try to stick with, mostly because I either paint just how GW do on the box, or I do very limited colour choices, mostly because I'm colourblind red and green. So like I find it very different to determine a red and a green between each other, and it just confuses me when I look at stuff. So that's why I tend to. If you look at my Stormcast, it's more the turquoise is more blue, and the red's more sort of like purple. It's or more beige, because then it differentiates the colors enough for me to go like, okay, that makes sense. Whereas if it was red and green next to each other, I'd be like, no
That's
idea.
why you never painted orcs, right? So this hat at the moment just looks like one color, right? So
yeah, it's just
this is quite good as well. It's got like a face, and it talks about like color tinting. So this is for pale skin. It's saying that like yellow at the top, red in the middle, and blue at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that if you for example painted a face, then you glazed yellow at the top and glazed red around the nose and the eyes, and then blue around the chin, you could actually get a very nice natural looking face on a model. If you use like using Kislev, Guilliman, Pallid Witch, or whatever, and you're like, okay, so the face is painted, but to add that level of tonal variation. So basically, it's that a big realism. Subject.
It's a massive subject.
And there's no right or wrong, really. I think the important thing when you're painting a miniature is you're trying to put light in the right place and create a realistic look. I mean, we'll see. It depends if you're doing a bust or a showpiece or you're doing an army. Because obviously, like, you might say, well, I don't want to paint it like that. So, like, the reason the heavy metal paint how they do is so it photographs from every angle. And it's not light dependent. They don't do this whole xenophore directional light stuff. Whereas if you were like, well, actually, I want to do this light directional OSL type stuff, and then I set the army up in a certain way where it plays on a display board or whatever, and it looks good because it has that. And you can do it, if you do it on each model, just be consistent, like across the army. I think it is a very big topic, but I would just say the best thing about painting is to experiment and have fun. So just because you've painted something in blue green doesn't mean you can't use yellow orange just so that it isn't opposite or it's not next to it. I can't use that. You can. You might find something that looks quite good, but you might find if you push it more into orange, or into red, it would look better. So it's just up to you really to play around and understand.
You kind of know when something looks, you can tell when something's not right. A lot of the time people ask you your opinion, like me personally as a painter, so they'll come to me and go like, what do you think of this? It's because they something doesn't quite feel right. It's because they've made some odd color choice that kind of is a little bit jarring. And you kind of know when you hit that sweet spot, because you tend to not ask people's opinion if the colors match or the colors are right. Just to touch on what Russ has said, and I'll put the link in the description below. If you are a Prime Amazon Prime Twitch subscriber and you subscribe to the Warhammer community, the Warhammer Twitch stream, the Heavy Metal team have got a very good show on color theory that Wade from the community podcast linked. So I'll put that link below. It's a very, very good show. You need to have a Twitch subscription to Warhammer TV to watch it, but yeah, I think that's also a really good touching point where you've got Max Valet explaining why they chose like ultramarines as they did, because it's a triadic color scheme, and and why Stormcast work is because it's essentially the same thing, and it's essentially yellow blue and white and with red accents, and you think, well, Stormcasts aren't yellow, and it's like, well, gold's yellow. It's the same sort of thing, and that's why essentially when you look at it, a Stormcast Hammers of Sigmar guy is an ultramarine. It's just had the colors reverted. Instead of the blue being the primary color, it's the yellow, as opposed to the yellow being and the gold on the rims of the ultramarines are then the yellow, if that makes sense.
It's like if you're painting like Khorne and you've got red armor and you push the brass into a green spectrum, so all brass is really is gold with green added to it, because it goes that kind of color. So I used to glaze like scaly green over my metallics on my Chaos to make it look more washed out, less red, because I wanted it to be different to the armor. Red, and I don't like red and blue in this color scheme. I don't know why. I just don't like it. I think it looks really artificial. If I have red and blue on a model, I need it to be very, very muted or washed out, and so I wouldn't want to put like silver and red on a model, and if the silver's very bluey, I would want to push it out of blue, like, and it's that kind of either have it
but
just
you
more...
develop those tastes, don't you? Like,
Yeah.
as well. Like you look at stuff and go, because like you think about it, and it's just like red and blue is like, again, like I don't like it particularly on many things, but then you look at stuff like Spider-Man's costume, Superman's costume, like they are red and blue, they work.
Oh,
But it's
it
just
works, but
it's yeah,
it
it's
is
a
an
preference then, isn't it?
extreme clashy thing that stands out, and so for a superhero outfit, it makes perfect sense. But
Yeah,
when I'm doing a model, if it's I've seen like Undead Armies where I think it was the Mantic range, they were running like very bright blue and very bright red, and I was just
yeah,
like, one of those colors should just be it should be crimson, and the blue should be a bit more purpley, and I'd be a lot more happier with that. It's kind of
yeah.
moving them closer together. I just don't like that extreme artificial contrast.
Yeah, and this is like where it comes down to again. It's like there is a, sometimes it's down to personal preference.
Oh, 100%.
So like,
I mean, this is
and
this
it's
is
like
for me. Like if I was painting an orc, like a Blood Bowl orc, and it was this red and this green, I would push this green into a more earthy, washed out, and this red into a more darker crimson, purely because I don't like that Christmas tree effect, which which you get.
Which is and it's one of those, isn't it, where you kind of it's there is no right or wrong. It's just a lot of this, and once you understand the fundamentals, it's then down to preference and what like. So you can hold up a model that Russ has painted, you can hold up a model that I've painted, you can hold up a model that Byron's painted, and you'll be able to tell which is which because we paint all differently stylistically, but also the color choices that we have. So Russ is very pastel and like desaturated in places, whereas and Byron's probably the opposite. Byron's like he does like quite bright, sort of like really saturated turquoise on his stuff, and whereas mine would be a sort of like your standard style of I tried copy the GW art book. That's just what I do, So yeah, like you'd be able to see it, and it's all down to then personal preference. Like if me, Russ, and Byron all painted an ultramarine, every single one of them would look different.
Yeah.
Down to our choices of color.
I think maybe with like Space Marines, it's a bit weird because they obviously have a very almost like military history. Like this is the right shade of color, and I think you can follow that. I mean, I don't. That's why I'm not a particularly big fan of painting Space Marines. That's why I'd make my own chapter up basically. Even then, like if I do Imperial Fists, I like to push it into a pastel.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like,
because
nope.
it's like for me, it's just how I am. But anyway, so basically, long TLDR version is Color Theory's big topic. Google's there. There are videos. There are books. If you want a good book, I recommend Color and Light. It's a bit heavy going. There's a lot in it. It's aimed at painting, like 2D painting. But if there is some stuff in there you read and you understand, you can apply it to your miniatures. But have fun, play around. There's no right or wrong. It's art at the end of the day. It's a subjective thing. You're not doing it wrong. But if you look at a model and you go, why does this not look right? If you understand sort of color theory and natural looking things, you might say, well, the reason it doesn't look right is because of this. Or maybe you just don't like it. I mean, it might be right for one person, it's not right for another. So I'd say paint what you like, paint what you enjoy, experiment, read. So all the information's out there on the internet. You can find it. Just enjoy yourself and don't worry too much about it. And if you're coming up with an army scheme and you're struggling, Colour Wheel's a good starting point. Then you can look at the GW range or whatever range of paints you use. Then you can think about the areas of the model, which is going to be the big area, the small area, the accent area, which colours am I going to use, and that's quite fun. And maybe there's a particular paint you like, and that's what you want to do. But it does require a lot of thought and a bit of experimentation and a bit of playing, but you should enjoy that process rather than think of it as a barrier to getting into what you want to do, which is paint. Because once you've figured that out, when you're painting, all you're doing is replicating the same thing. So actually, that to me, that's the boring bit, in a way. That's the application of the theory. And if you've already applied it for 4 models and it works, you're done. I've got to do it over 50. So that's why I tend to pick armies that don't have lots of the same model, because I would run out of gas because I get bored. I'd be like, no, I need to do something else now. So understand, just have a play, paint models. It's fun. It's just meant to be fun. So, but hopefully that helped. If you had a bit mystified by colour theory, just put it into Google, have a read, play around, watch some videos, buy this book.
This is our take on it. Have a look at that.
Paint more
Either
models.
you
Try things out.
the Wire TV Twitch thing. Check out the heavy metal stuff. There's loads of ways you can do it, but yeah, that's how, like, I guess we would apply it, right? So
yeah, I think when you get those breakthroughs in painting, for me, like one of those breakthroughs is all to do with translucency and undercolors, where you have a color over a color to get another color, and that, or a recess wash of a color over a color that isn't the same color, but it gives you the effect. Like, do you shade red with a deep red wash, or do you shade it with blue? Actually, blue kind of works. So, you know, ink you by darkness into a red really makes it look nice. So anyway, there you go. So hope that was useful. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.